Hello and what's up everyone, it's Thunderbob here tonight, and tonight I'm bringing you a review for... wait for it.
Resident Evil 4.
I love the Resident Evil series, and while it's hard to pick, I think Resident Evil 4 is my favorite game in the series, and one of my favorite games of all time. It masterfully balances action, survival horror, and the campiness that Resident Evil is known for into an almost perfect game. I played the game upon release more than 15 years ago on the GameCube, and then again on the Wii, and I've also messed around with that mediocre PC port. Before the release of the virtual reality version, I would have said that the Wii version is the best one and the one you should be playing, but I think it's finally been surpassed. This game has completely been rebuilt inside of the Unreal Engine, and has thousands of new textures, though this is still the game underneath, for better or worse. This was a beautiful game 15 years ago, and it still holds up well today, though there are a few rough spots, like the low poly vistas and some of the very large open areas. They've remodeled all of the weapons and most of the objects you interact with to be able to view them in 3D space. Examining your weapons in all their glory brings a lot more realness to the experience. The music and sound effects still hold up nicely, though the spatial audio could be a bit better. Sometimes it can be difficult to determine where an enemy is in relation to you. The music's excellent, and the ethereal safe room music in particular brings a very strong sense of nostalgia to my brain. The guns sound nice and punchy, and the calls the enemies make are very effective, and the moaning of the regenerators in particular is quite panic-inducing. The gameplay has been changed in that you can move and shoot at the same time. In the original, pulling your weapon would lock you in place, and made the game more difficult and at times scarier. Now you feel like John Wick, switching between two guns, your knife, or a grenade attached to your body on the fly. The controls are very intuitive, and this game has some of the best VR gunplay I've ever experienced. With the VR controls now you get to turn cranks, press buttons, and solve puzzles with your actual hand instead of just tapping a button. Even just pushing open a door to peek inside feels so much more realistic now. The controls actually make the game a bit easier, but it can still be very intense at times. They've also announced a mercenary mode being added in. It's kind of like a horde mode from the original game, and I hope that adds some additional challenge to the game, as it's a bit easy with the additional movement that you get in VR. The story is just as cheesy as ever, though the campy acting feels intentional this time rather than accidental like the earlier Resident Evil games. You play as Leon Kennedy on a mission to rescue the president's daughter, and when I write that out it sounds even campier than it comes off in the game. Instead of traditional zombies, in this you encounter victims of the parasite. They move more quickly and can use weapons, though they're still pretty sluggish. The story goes into some ridiculous places, but overall it's enjoyable. There are only a few small negative aspects that I can come up with. The QTE events in particular are an annoying throwback to arcade game design. You can disable them from the menu, but there's still some that appear even after you do so. In particular, there's one in the minecart area that's an instant fail state, sets you back about 15 minutes, and it's easy to miss the prompt. And it's a new prompt that you haven't run into previously. I ended up having to restart that section twice because of this dumb QTE. Speaking of archaic game design, I hate Ashley. She's probably the worst aspect of the game. You have to babysit her, and she can do nothing for herself. Her yelling takes me back to the crying of baby Mario in Yoshi's Island. Luckily, there are long stretches of the game where you're alone, and the sections where you play as her are actually kind of interesting. This is also one of the longest Resident Evil games, and it can drag a bit at times. Some of the areas end up feeling a little too long and a little too repetitious, but overall, its pacing's okay. Unfortunately, the game is only available on the Quest 2, and it seems doubtful that a PC VR version's incoming. I'm not a fan of these exclusives, but it's nice that the game can run right on the headset, and I ran into no real performance issues through my entire playthrough. It is still unfortunate that these games are not going to either Steam or at least to the Oculus PC store. That would be preferable. Even with these minor issues, I still love the game and can completely recommend it to either longtime fans or those trying the game for the first time. This is a game that's influenced the third-person genre and the future of the franchise greatly, and even now, 15 years later, is totally worth playing. And this is by far my favorite way to play this game now. Thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I do have a full playthrough of Resident Evil 4 VR on the channel. I'll have a link to that playlist. And if you enjoy this, why don't you think about checking out some of my other content? I've got reviews for other new releases, previews of unreleased and early access games. I've got retro game coverage and a ton of virtual reality coverage. If you check out some of it and you like it, please consider subscribing. Thank you again for watching, everyone, and have a good night.